All right, here we are. Let's talk for just a moment about what we've done so far while I've introduced REPL to you. And so you should be able to recognize what you see. I have collapsed the file list of files on the left-hand side. To do that, simply click on the files icon up on the left-hand side. So I've got it again. So I collapsed it again. Now, main.py, that's our code editor, which initially is the middle section. Now it's the left section. And then, of course, the console on the right-hand side. And we've done work in the console. I showed you that it's a fine little calculator. And then I also showed you how it is that we assign a value to a name. So, like, for instance, I don't know, how about a super simple example? So let A equal 2, let B equal 3, and let C equal A minus B. We talked about how this works last time, so just quick review. These are names, that is variables. They get values. So that equal sign symbol isn't really the equal sign, it's the assignment token. It's used to assign a value to a name or to a variable. The value always occurs on the right-hand side, and the variable or the name always occurs on the left-hand side. So the variable A gets the value 2, the variable B gets the value 3, and then the third line of code, where we have C assignment token A minus B, what Python does is that it first evaluates the right-hand side. That's the way that variable assignment always works. Evaluate the right-hand side. So A gets a value of 2, B gets a value of 3, and then 2 minus 3 is -1. And then the result of that computation, the result of the evaluation, that becomes the value of C. So evaluate the right-hand side, and then whatever value results, assign that to the variable or the name on the left. And then we can see that value of C if we want. The way that we get the value, we display the value of a variable in the console is we simply type the variable in, and then we get the value there. So C is -1. Now, I want to talk a little bit about classes with you, or an alternate term here is types. Classes and types, those two words will be used interchangeably in this class. So I have to talk just a little sort of theoretically for just a moment. And like so much of what happens early on in this class, you don't really begin to understand it deeply until you worked with it for some time. So this is one of those cases for sure. So you'll begin to understand a little bit about what I mean by classes or types, but you won't really understand deeply what this is until I suspect the very end of the class, where our final act in the class will be to construct our own new classes of objects and to tell Python how to work with them. So classes, well, what is this? Um, Let me say first of all that every object in Python is of a certain type or, synonymously, class. Now, what are objects in Python? Well, the typical way that Python programmers will answer you is that everything is an object in Python. Well, let me just give you examples. 2 is an object, 3 is an object, -1 is an object, 3.14159 is an object. The strings that we saw, like the hello world string, I'll type it in again inside the console. So hello world, that string in quotation marks, that's an object. So Python repeats it back to me. Just notice something here. What if I were to type in like just hello without quotation marks? Think about for a moment what Python will do with that. No quotation marks means that Python will think that this is a variable, so it will attempt to print the value of the variable to the screen. But we have never given it a value. That is, it's not defined. Ooh, look at that beautiful error message. Name hello is not defined. Let me go ahead and suggest read your error messages. So look, that was a variable Python thought, but it didn't have a value, so error message. But the line above, the hello world, there it is again. I use the arrow key to get to it. That's certainly an object in Python. So yeah, objects, numbers, both with and without the decimal point, and strings as well. These are examples of objects in Python. And they are all of a particular type. That is, they're all within a certain class. Now the object -1 that we saw up in the console, its type is integer. Okay, its type is integer. That is the class to which it belongs. How about like 3.14159? And I'll show you all this in the console in just a moment. The type of that, the class to which it belongs, is float, which is short for floating point number. And then the class to which the string hello world belongs is, well, no surprise here, string. Okay, so let's make Python tell us what the types are. Okay, so how about the type of -1? Class int. Do you see that? int, that's the class to which it belongs. And now let's see the type of 3.14159. Class float. How about type of hello? Class str. Okay, so it's told us the class to which it belongs. Um, and notice this as well, that you can definitely get the type of variable, okay? But what it will tell you is the type of the object that is named by the variable, okay? So the type of A is class int because the value of A is 2. And we can definitely assign a string to a variable if we want as well. Any object in Python can be assigned to a variable. So yep, D is hello. And then if we wanted the type of D, well, that will be the type of the object that is named by D, and that will be string. Okay, so uh, here are classes, right? And we have different classes. Now, the obvious question at this point is why, right? Like, what does it matter? And the short answer to that, and no doubt the correct answer, is that the class to which an object belongs determines what can and cannot be done with that object. Okay, that is, what can be done with objects of certain types cannot be done with objects of other types. So let me just give you an example of that. So here we are in the console, right? So I can take the number 2 and I can divide it by the number 3, and there we are, 0.666 and so on, our approximation of 2 divided by 3. But let's make those strings instead. And notice that I used single quotation marks. I did that just to make the point that I could. Python doesn't care about the number of quotation marks that you use, single or double, to create a string. There is more to the story than that, but for now, that's enough of the story. So what this says to Python is take the string 2 and divide that by the string 3. Oh, dang, can't do that. That's an error message. So the point that I just made, it's absolutely true. 2 and 3 belong to the integer class, and division is defined for the integer class. String 2, string 3, those are not integers, those are strings, and division is not defined for the string class, so we absolutely get an error message for that. So this is something to which you have to pay attention. And something else that I want to point out to you as well, and the reason that I've decided to talk about classes here is because I wanted to show you something that you can do with strings, which is actually quite helpful. Um, but that is addition of strings, and I wanted to explain to you well how that works, and I wanted to point out to you that what we mean when we talk about the addition of strings is very different than what we mean when we talk about the addition of numbers. So just look in the console again. So I can type in 2 plus 3. Those are numbers, right? Those are integers in particular because they're not in quotation marks. So this is the instruction to Python, tell me the value of 2 plus 3, which is 5. But notice what I can do if I do string 2 plus string 3. I get string 2, 3. So you see that symbol right there, the plus symbol between the integers 2 and 3, and then the plus symbol in between the strings 2 and 3. They actually mean something radically different. Okay, when it's integers, yes, it means addition. When it's strings, better not to call it addition. It's better to call it, here's the word for that, concatenation. Concatenation, concatenation, which means just simply stick together. So what we did was we stuck together the string 2 and the string 3, and we got the string 2, 3. So here's something else about classes. Yes, the same like symbols can be used for both, like that symbol that looks like addition and really is for integers but isn't for strings. It could appear for both classes, but it can mean something radically different. Okay. Oh, and notice that I did teach you something. I told you a way to build new strings out of old strings. You can put the concatenation symbol in between them. And notice that I was careful, right? Because since the objects that I meant to name were strings, we talk about concatenation. So, just quick review, and then I think I'll call it quits for today. We have seen 3 classes. We have seen the int class, we have seen the float class, we have seen the string class. And part of what it is that we do in this course, I was about to call it this class, but I'll call it this course, this computer science course, is we learn about classes and how it is that the objects within them can be manipulated. So we'll talk about lists. That's a remarkably important class for Python. It's a way to store multiple objects away. You've noticed that variables store a single object, one object per variable, but what if you wanted to store multiple objects? The way typically to do that is with a list. There will also be a dictionary data type. There will be a function data type. Oh, I just called them data types now. Sometimes I'll say data type. every type is ultimately a data type. Yeah, so this is really one of the stories that works its way throughout this entire class. That is the story of the different types that Python provides us and what it is that we can do with objects in those types.